Husband says, God told me our baby is a sin. Then he vanished. It started like any other Sunday. The sun came through the kitchen window in golden streaks, casting a warm light across the floor. Laura stood by the counter, gently stirring her coffee, her other hand resting on the small swell of her belly. She was only 9 weeks along, but already she felt like everything in her life was changing. She was glowing with a quiet kind of joy, the kind that comes after years of waiting and praying. Ethan walked into the room slower than usual. His face was pale, his eyes restless. He didn't greet her. He didn't look at the ultrasound photo on the fridge. He just sat down, hands folded, staring at the table as though it had something to say. Laura tried to fill the silence. She asked if he wanted breakfast, if he slept well, if he'd finally tell his parents the news. Ethan didn't answer at first. Then, without raising his eyes, he said it. God told me our baby is a sin. The words didn't register right away. Laura stood frozen, thinking she misheard him. But Ethan didn't speak again. He stood up, walked to the sink, and began washing a dish that wasn't even dirty. His hands trembled. His silence was louder than his words. That day, he avoided her. He didn't come to church. He didn't return her touch when she placed his hand on her stomach that evening. He mumbled excuses, stared at his Bible for hours, and barely slept. At night, Laura lay awake beside him, feeling a stranger's presence in her own bed. Over the next few days, the distance grew. Ethan stopped eating with her. He stayed in the garage, pretending to work on an old shelf he'd already built months ago. Sometimes she caught him whispering under his breath. Prayers, maybe, or something else. Laura began to wonder if something had broken inside him. This wasn't the Ethan she knew. He had wanted this child. They both had. But now his eyes looked haunted, like he was carrying something she couldn't see. Then, one morning, he was gone. The car was still in the driveway, his keys on the hook, his phone on the kitchen counter, Bible open, face down, on the table. The first 24 hours were a blur. Laura called his phone again and again, but it just rang from the kitchen counter. She checked the local hospitals, called the police, even drove to the hiking trail behind the church where Ethan liked to think. Nothing. No one had seen him. Not since the night before, when he said, "I need air," and walked into the garage. He never came back inside. By the second day, neighbors started asking questions. Carol from next door brought over a casserole and a thin smile that didn't quite hide the curiosity in her eyes. "Has Ethan done this before?" she asked gently. Laura shook her head. She didn't tell her what Ethan had said about the baby. That still sat like a stone in her stomach. There were rumors anyway. Church folks muttered about stress, about secrets, about whether the baby was even his. Laura stopped answering her phone. The joy she once felt had curdled into something quiet and cold. She wandered the house in circles, ending up in Ethan's study each time. She opened drawers, dug through old books, stared at the wall where a cross used to hang. In the back of a notebook, she found a letter, never sent. The handwriting was Ethan's. It read, "If I disappear, it's because I have no right to stay." She thought back to things she had ignored. The way he changed the subject when children came up in sermons. The distant look he got every time she brought up baby names. Once, after a nightmare, he told her, "There are things you don't want to know about me." And she laughed, thinking it was a joke. Then Marcus showed up, mid-40s, tired eyes, clothes that looked slept in. He said he knew Ethan from before. When she asked, "Before what?" he just said, "Before he became who you know now." He stayed 10 minutes. Before he left, he looked at her and said, "He's not gone. He's just trying to outrun something he never could." That night, Laura opened Ethan's laptop. In the draft folder, a message stared back at her. No greeting, no sign-off. Just a line of text, raw and quiet. "I couldn't live with myself if it happened again." Laura drove into Ethan's hometown under a gray sky that seemed to mirror her mood. The streets looked ordinary, like any small town. Quiet gas stations, brick storefronts, a diner with peeling paint. But the air felt heavy. She stopped at the address Ethan had listed on old forms. A modest house with blue shutters. An older woman answered. Her face tightened when Laura said Ethan's name. "We haven't heard from him in years," the woman said flatly. A man joined her at the door, arms crossed. "If he's in trouble," he added, "it's his own doing." No warmth, no concern. Laura thanked them anyway and walked away, her stomach turning. She found the local church he once mentioned. The pastor there was kind but cautious. He remembered Ethan. Quiet boy, kept to himself, smart, but troubled. Laura asked what he meant, but he didn't offer more. Just said, "Some things weigh heavier on the soul than others." He gave her a name of someone who might know more, a camp director from Ethan's teenage years. At a small diner, Laura sat near two older women talking by the window. One of them glanced her way when she gave her name. "Bennett? As in Ethan Bennett?" Laura nodded. The woman's smile faded. "Wasn't he the one who—" She stopped, looked at her friend, then back at Laura. "Never mind. I shouldn't say." But she already had. Something had happened. Back at the church, Laura slipped into a side room. Rows of shelves lined the walls. She looked through old youth group yearbooks, dusty boxes of photos. Tucked inside a Bible with frayed corners was a newspaper clipping. Yellowed, folded neatly. A headline, "Local child injured in camp tragedy." The year matched Ethan's high school days. She stared at it, her hands trembling. The article was short. A toddler, age 3, had died during a camp hike. No charges were filed. An unnamed teen was reportedly assigned to watch him. The article didn't name Ethan, but Laura didn't need it to. Her heart sank. Something inside her shifted. All the strange pieces from the past weeks began to click into place, though the full picture remained just out of reach. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, short. "I know where he is, but he's not ready for you yet." The cabin sat at the edge of a pine forest, quiet and still, like it had been forgotten by the world. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. Laura stepped out of the car, her heart pounding. The air was sharp with cold, but her hands were warm with sweat. She walked slowly, her boots crunching against the gravel. The front door opened before she could knock. Ethan stood there, thinner than she remembered, a scruffy beard covering his face. His eyes met hers for only a second before he looked away. He didn't say her name, didn't ask why she came, just stepped back and let her in. The inside of the cabin was simple. Bare wood, a small fireplace, a Bible on the table, pages worn from turning. They sat in silence. The wind outside whispered through the trees. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice low. He said he hadn't planned to leave, but something inside him snapped. Said he thought God was trying to warn him, that this baby wasn't meant to be. Laura didn't interrupt. She let him talk, though every word scraped against her like broken glass. He stared into the fire as he spoke. Said he'd been haunted for years, that every joy in his life felt like a mistake waiting to be punished. He said, "When you told me you were pregnant, I didn't feel happy. I felt terror." Laura listened, her hands clenched in her lap. Her voice was calm, but firm. "You think disappearing protects us?" she asked. "You think our daughter is better off without you?" Ethan looked at her then, really looked. His face crumpled, and tears slipped down his cheeks. "I thought I'd hurt her, like before," he whispered. "I thought I was cursed." Laura stood, walked over to him, and sat on the floor beside his chair. She placed his hand on her belly. For a moment, he pulled back, but then his hand stayed. She felt the smallest flutter beneath his palm. A quiet movement, a sign of life. He didn't speak after that, not for a long while, but he didn't move his hand either. He just sat there, eyes closed, as if waiting for something to break, something that had been locked inside him for far too long. Ethan sat on the porch as the morning fog curled around the trees. Laura handed him a mug of coffee, and he took it without speaking. His eyes were clearer now, though still shadowed. The night before had opened something in him. He hadn't run when she came. He hadn't pushed her away. For the first time in weeks, he'd let himself be seen. Inside, by the fire, he finally told her the truth. He was 16 when it happened, a summer camp volunteer, responsible for a small boy during a short hike. He looked away for less than a minute. That's all it took. The boy wandered off, slipped into a shallow creek. They pulled him out too late. The death was ruled accidental, but it didn't matter. Not to Ethan. He'd carried it ever since. Every joy, every bit of good in his life, felt like something borrowed, something he didn't deserve. He thought God had forgiven him. But when Laura told him she was pregnant, everything came back. The fear, the shame, the voice in his head that told him he would fail again, that he would destroy what he loved most. Laura listened without interrupting. Then she reached for his hand. Her words were quiet but steady. She told him he wasn't cursed, that he had punished himself long enough, that maybe, just maybe, this child wasn't a warning or a trap. Maybe she was a gift, not to test him, but to heal him. Ethan cried again, but the tears felt different this time, softer, like something was loosening its grip. He agreed to come home with her. No fanfare, no promises, just a slow return to something like hope. He started therapy. They went to counseling. He even dusted off the crib they'd stored in the garage all those months ago. The baby arrived on a cold, rainy Thursday in March. A girl, healthy and perfect, with her mother's eyes. Laura held her first. Then Ethan, hesitant at first, cradled her in his arms. She opened her tiny mouth and yawned, as if the world didn't scare her at all. They named her Grace. And in that moment, Ethan whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "She's not a sin. She's salvation."